at the end of the day, the expectations and reality is slightly different, as of now at least, and that can obviously change. In fact, I've been talking to so many customers, and we've been every day, I think every other day, these things are part of our conversations, that how do we tune the system, how do we optimize the system. But on a fundamental level, if you see, the biggest concern at this point of time is the quality of the answer and the hallucination, that sort of thing. I mean, that's something which is really worrying, and that's something which is why customers are slightly cautious, I would say, in taking anything to production. As Ellen said, like about 40 plus POCs and then one going to production. That's not new. We've been seeing that, I think, in last probably 1 or 2 months, tried probably 10, 15 different models. Every other day we get to see something new coming. And this is the reality, that the challenges of hallucination is one thing which is clearly stopping and putting some brakes on to go into production. On a fundamental level, if you see, as Ellen said, enterprises are slightly different. But before we even talk about that, if you see the fundamental reason why we see inaccurate responses or this thing is, we all need to understand is that, as I said in the beginning, you really didn't have the control of what was actually used to train the LLM models at the end of the day, right? You didn't train those models. So if garbage has actually got into the system, then you would expect some sort of that coming out as well in your responses or when you prompt to those models. Second thing I think we all need to understand is in enterprises, the customer's context and all of those things, we are clearly missing. So for LLM, I mean, I am asking something versus, so when I say I am asking, like an admin of a software asking something versus a business user asking something, not really much different. Similarly, what is my purchase history, those kind of things. LLM has no information of that, right? So for the generic responses, you've seen that it's doing fairly well. When Ellen also said, like, you talk about the specific domain, you get into those things, people are trying small scale models, and the fundamental reason is same, because accuracy is very wrong. And the third, I think the piece we all need to understand is that in enterprises, it's about point in time, weekly, when you're shipping the software weekly, monthly, right? You can't trust on a system which is being trained 2 years ago, right? So your content is updated, your questions are different, challenges are different, known issues are different now with the new versions of the software or new versions of the product that you're launching. So that is another challenge. Personalization, access controls are another few areas, as I mentioned. Like, you really can't show one thing to same thing to every user, right? I've asked a question about somebody's conversation. I should not be able to see somebody who's not reporting to me at the end of the day, right? So how do you build those access controls and those that sort of things as well is also equally important. Now, I think the way you can address this problem, at least at this point of time, is there are only two approaches. Approach one, you pick these models and you try and train them. You show them the latest content that you have, or you tune them, change some sort of parameters. And the second approach is, which you probably touch later, is RAG, the context building. The first one, which is about just picking these models, the shelf, and just retrain them, show them the content, is a very time-consuming and expensive process, because it needs a lot of things, right? Not just in terms of the infrastructure or the cost, but you need that skill set as well, right? You need people who can really define the right classification entities and those kind of things, look at the data, identify the right model, identify the right fine-tuning strategy as well. These things are like something which is not really day-to-day. Your engineers or IT admins are actually capable of doing that, right? So all those things, they take time. You identify the model, you train it, you quantize it, you try the different variations, you change the parameters, weights, all those things. And then at some point of time, you probably would see that, okay, now this is behaving in the right with the right expectations. But you can't do that every day, right? Every day it's not possible to run that sort of a heavy lifting on your models. So which is why the second approach, as I just mentioned, is like very these are the things. But then the second approach is, which is more popular now, is basically retrieval augmented generation RAG. And what it says is that what you can do is that when you're prompting to the LLM models, try and add some context which you are aware of. Okay, so anything that you know about the user's question, when it is when a user asks a question to a chatbot, instead of making a direct interaction with the LLM model, integration with the LLM model, you build some context for that prompt. Now, how do you build that context? The context is like any information, knowledge that you have around that user, around that query. You can just get that locally because you have that information. Essentially, at the end of the day, LLM don't have that information. Put that as part of the prompt and then you give it to the LLM. Then the chances are that your system will improve, the accuracy will improve. There are less chances that the models are going to hallucinate. But now this also brings a little bit of challenges. It's not like it's really very straightforward, because as you can see, I mean, I'm sure you all already seen that. Some of you have already started using the public models. They charge you on the number of tokens, and context at the end of the day ties to the number of tokens. So it's not straightforward that you pick 3 documents which are more relevant to the user's question and just send it to the LLM, because it's going to die, right? It's not really going to take that. There's a limit to the tokens, to the context you can send. Which is why you need a very good lookup engine, very optimized lookup engine locally that can really take the user's query and with your LLM. So, and that's where the FRAG, the whole approach comes into the picture, is that you take the initial prompt from the user, you run it through a local vector search engine. Now, one of the good thing about LLMs is that they can generate responses from multiple pieces of information, multiple documents at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And especially when you're a buyer of a product and you're using the product, and over a period of time, what happens is that you're not really looking for a direct answer or something like that. You need a more holistic solution to the problem that you're facing. Now, that can only happen if you get to see those related stuff also close to the problem that you're seeing, not really just one answer to your problem, right? It's not a fairly straightforward how to or a relevant type of a question now. And this is where it's very important that when you're building the context through these search engines, you actually get to all the possible knowledge repositories. Now, this could be your product documentation. This could be a conversation going on a forum. This could be something which is embedded on your courses in your learning management system, right? So you got to make sure that you go to all different pieces, all different silos, extract the information out of that. And this has to be a vector search engine so that it's highly optimized in terms of the size of the context as well, right? Now, the other thing that you can do as part of this is that add the user's access control layer as well, right? So if I get to see only these set of documents as a partner, or if I get to see these set of documents as a customer, those things can be done before you talk to the LLM, right? So you have to build all of those things within the LLM layer itself. You can build them as part of this whole RAG thing. And then any user behavior, if you know you have in the system, like you've been tracking the user's journey and then what sort of preferences they have, what sort of, is a developer or is a business user or is an IT guy, right? What sort of content preferences that user probably will have at the end of the day. You have that information. Why not to make that as part of the whole context? And once you do that, then you build the right prompt, which is highly optimized, and then you give it to a LLM, right? Now, one other thing what you can do is that so this also does not give you a full guarantee, right? The LLMs are still going to hallucinate at some point of time, but the chances are going to be very low, right?
Yeah.
And then once you get a response, the idea is that you run another layer of a quick semantic search against the user's query and validate that before you actually give it to the user, right? So that's a whole idea, that how do you really kind of Um, Not really take the most expensive approach. It's time consuming. That's bring the models, train them, all those things. But something which is easily you can do, and that's what the FRAG is all about. So far, we've seen a lot of success. We've been running these experiments not just for our customers, but internally as well. We run an organization of about 1,200 odd employees here. There are different use cases. Everybody wants to use some sort of LLM use case. Every department, right? IT's been chasing us, other departments as well. And we've seen this is fairly successful if you run it on top of a local context. So I think that's the idea I wanted to share with all of you, that we are seeing some success with this sort of implementation. But I'm happy to take any questions, or Ellen, do you have any take on that? You've seen something else. But this is something I see is a little bit of a hope. The semantic search along with LLMs, I would see, is more of like a cookies and tea or cookies and coffee. The combination has to work together.